Can you hear me is the new introduction for hello, fellow Rotarians in an online world. Can you hear me is the first thing we ask. First of all, I would like to thank deeply Barry and Nigel for inviting me to talk to you guys. And I really appreciate the chance that we are having now, as opposed to the threats that we are suffering from the COVID-19. We should also look at the opportunities that are arising as the other side of the flip coin of that same threat. I would like to begin, if I may, to make three suggestions, immediate suggestions for you as incoming club presidents. And the first one we dealt with this morning. As Barry knows, we have a group, a task force named Grow Rotary Task Force, which is going to be, looks like a permanent committee in RI that's focused mainly on membership development and new and innovative ideas about creating clubs and new forms of relationship as a management tool for controlling membership and developing membership. First, check with your current presidents which clubs are not meeting virtually. It's extremely important that we don't lose them in the process. We did a survey here in my two zones, and my two zones comprise Brazil and South America, 7 countries, the whole of South America except for Colombia and Venezuela. So it's a pretty large continent. It's almost entirely the entire South America. And we did a survey in our 45 districts. And the number surprised me. Only 40% in some districts of the clubs are meeting virtually, online, which is a big threat to our organization because we're going to lose the bond, the connection. This year we are supposed to connect the world. So as we connect the world, we are not supposed to disconnect our members who have not been able to have access to online meetings. So my first suggestion to you as an incoming president, get in touch with your current leadership and make sure that you engage and involve everyone. We have to engage everyone in this process. For those districts that have discovered the online tool, on the other side, they have a very good performance in inducting new members. I myself have witnessed 11 induction ceremonies, multiple clubs in one district for 51 members, new members, and I had the patience to write down some of the, some of the bios for the members, for the incoming members. And the youngest one was a lady, a girl, 24 years old, a former Rotary actor who jumped on board a Rotary this year. And the oldest one was a former Navy officer, age 62. 45 of them were under the age of 50, which is our target. We need that kind of audience. We need that kind of a rejuvenating process in our Rotary ranks. And 60% were women. 31 out of the 51 new members were inducted online, virtually. Online induction were women. And they seemed very comfortable. So I encourage you to get in touch and bring aboard those clubs that are not meeting online, and at the same time, intensify, promote training sessions more than the in-person meetings. Because we have to admit, we Rotarians love to hug and kiss and shake hands. And we are not going to be able to do that for quite an amount of time. And the quality of our communication loses because we don't have the nonverbal communication that we are so used to. We speak with our hands, with our eyes, with our body, and we will not have that access to that level of information. So I encourage you to replace the quality of in-person meetings through the quantity of online meetings. And I have, as I said, witnessed several inductions of new members on this online world. It's fantastic. They don't seem to complain about not having meals, about not having our protocol, which sometimes can be very boring, as you know. They don't complain about food and drink. They are connected with our programs. They're thrilled to belong to an organization that's 115 years old and still living, still thriving. So this is what captivates this audience, which is very important to us. They're on the right path to Rotary. And if you allow me, I would say, as an inspiration, which was Barry's theme, I would like to give you 7 reasons to be optimistic in this hard moments of COVID-19. I may be naive, but I'd rather be labeled as optimist rather than naive. First, we've seen a resurgence of journalistic reliable sources. Because of this disease, we are all tuned up to sound, reliable news information sources. We tend to despise and to neglect the information that we get on social media, some of which is totally biased, totally compromised, and usually negative. So I see here, at least in my corner of the world, a resurgence, a revival of good news, news that emanate from people who are professional. And if you don't like the information they're giving you, you can sue them in court, which is not something that you can do on social media. Point number 2, we've seen a revival of science. I read in the Middle Ages, when we have the Black Plague that killed millions and millions back in 1300s, that sick people attributed this sickness, this disease, to God's revenge. And they would gather in a church and they would spread the disease even further. So today we have science to back us up. Everyone who suffers from the disease, we want to go to a good hospital. And Barry is an expert in that. A good hospital with a sound medical team, with good respirators, with good ventilators, with good equipment. So this is, the resurgence of science and a true recognition of the value of a good medical team in our communities, something that we might have overlooked over the few years, over the last years. Third point, solidarity beats selfishness. I think there is a movement, and I watched a TV tonight. We see on TV, a national broadcast, examples of companies and institutions like our institution, Rotary, being publicly displayed as promoters of good. Companies are donating money. There is a bank in Brazil, Itaú, which donated $200 million to fight COVID-19. And we are partnering, we Rotary as an institution are partnering with this bank in a hospital, Syrio-Libanese, which is a reference hospital here in the country, to do testing in homes, in retirement homes, which is a big repository of disease, as you know, because most people are over 60, 70, and 80. So I see this trend of growing solidarity coming back on the wake of the virus threat. 4, in Brazil, we used to complain very much about our public health system. We used to throw darts at the public health system. It's incompetent, it's too expensive, we should all go private and stuff like that. Well, this crisis has proved that we have to question that before we advance any further, because what has been the stronghold of the medical treatment in Brazil for the lower classes, not for the upper classes, they're okay. They'll always have access to good hospitals and good medical treatment, good equipment. But for the lower classes, the public health system is the only place that can have access to. And if we're not for the public health systems, our death toll would be much higher than already is. So I think it's a healthy debate that we are questioning some of the dogmatic approaches that we had been listening over the last 5 years. Point number 5, environment. When we saw on Italian television that the swans were swimming in Venice after, I don't know, so many years, and the Indian portion, the northern part of India, could see the Himalayas for the first time because the fog was gone, I think that puts a question in our minds. What kind of development, what kind of economic growth are we promoting at the expense of what? Are we going to leave only garbage to our sons and daughters? You know, what's going to be our legacy? And the environment showed us very clearly that when we go to sleep, they breathe. The environment breathes. So I think it's a lesson learned. 6, I thought it was very emblematic that the British Prime Minister, who is a strong advocate for isolation, he basically tries to isolate the British islands from the continental Europe by barring immigration, by putting obstacles on setting new immigrants in the country. He publicly acknowledged that he was saved by 2 nurses, one from New Zealand and a boy from Porto, Portugal. I think that was ironic, that isolation is not the solution for the problems that we are having right now. Of course, isolation, social distancing at this moment, yes. But we have to connect the world to solve the problems that reach the global level. The exchange of ideas between US scientists and scientists in Europe and in China and in Europe or Japan, whatever, they will hold the key to solve this problem. And as we connect more and more of the world, certainly we'll have a better solution for the problems that COVID-19 presents. And first and last, I think that in a philosophical way, we've come to realize that the virus is a big threat, but we are facing even bigger threats. Hate, greed, and mainly ignorance. The virus can be fought and can be won only by knowledge, by sympathy, solidarity, and by love, and by connection in the world. And I think in this new post-virus world, Rotary is very well positioned because our values continue to be strong. Diversity, integrity, service, leadership, fellowship, which stand at the core of our institution, will remain forever. Connect the world and open the opportunities. See the other side of the coin. Don't think only of the threats, but think how we can convert the threats into opportunities for this changing world. Thank you very much for having me, and I hope I've given you some positive message from down under.
Thank you so much, Mario. Again, really appreciate you taking the time to share. And I know our presidents are listening and taking notes, so you gave them some good suggestions. Thank you so much.
You bet. Thank you much.
Now I'll pass it on to Nigel, I believe.
Thank you, Barry. I'd just like to invite DGE Lyle to say a few words of welcome, please.
Thanks, Nigel. I'd like to warmly welcome our past Rotary International President, Barry, our Rotary International Director, Mario, and if anybody was in doubt about the international nature of this organization, tonight, RI Director Mario did such a wonderful job in painting that picture with his brush of words. Fantastic, thank you. I'd like to also recognize District Governors Delma and Trevor, all of our past district governors, because I believe we've got a number on, I've seen a few. My brother, DG Charles, he is there, I see him. DGNs, DGNDs, our presenter, AG Carla, Regional Membership Officer Audley, I also see you with us again. Great to have you back. Rotarians, Rotaractors, and future leaders, I bid you a truly warm welcome to today's information session hosted by your training team from 7020 and 7030. Once again, we have outstanding speakers for you, as you've already heard, and we hope that you will take advantage of the resources that are being made available to you to strengthen your leadership, not just in the year ahead, but in all the years ahead. This is what we hope that we are doing for you, providing you with the tools. So let's have fun tonight. I see we have another dynamic young lady who I will hand back to Nigel to do the further presentation. Thank you so much all for being with us. We have 355 of us on the call tonight so far. Thank you, Nigel.
Thank you, DG Lyle. It gives me great pleasure at this moment to introduce Mrs. Carla Stubbs. Carla joined the Rotary Club of Road Town in British Virgin Islands and is now a member and past president of the Rotary Club of Nassau Sunrise. She is an assistant governor-elect for the Rotary Clubs of Bahamas, and she is also a former First Lady. Carla holds a Bachelor of Law degree from the University of the West Indies and a Master of Law degrees from the University of Liverpool. She attended the Norman Manley Law School, Jamaica, and was admitted to the Jamaican Bar in 1993 and the Bar in the British Virgin Islands in 1997. Carla is originally from Jamaica, but has lived and worked in several islands of the Caribbean as a true Caribbean lady. She now calls New Providence, Bahamas home and teaches at the Eugene Dufu Law School, which is one of 3 regional schools run by the Council of Legal Education, which prepares students for admission to law practice in the Commonwealth Caribbean. Carla is an expert in dispute resolution, a trained mediator, and an arbitrator. She is also a licensed real estate agent. Carla says she has spare time. I have no idea when she gets that. And in her spare time, enjoys traveling, reading, public speaking, hiking. She is married to Felix Stubbs, past district governor of District 7020, whose claim to fame is that he is married to Carla. Ladies and fellow Rotarians, Carla is also a level 2 major donor, which is a great thing as far as the foundation is concerned, and a level 4 bequest society member. Without further ado, fellow Rotarians, I let you have Mrs. Carla Stubbs.
Merci beaucoup. Bonsoir à tous. Thank you. I was going to do a little bit more French, but I think we have interpreters, so I'll let them handle that. Big up District 7020, big up District 7030. Awesome, great to be here. Thank you. And I heard you, DG Eli, we should have fun, and I saw that little conflict resolution video earlier, so I'm going to do something that we can do in 7020. I had second thoughts about it, but we're talking about conflict. And sometimes people think conflict is about war. It's not. So I want to assure you I'm not going to speak about war tonight because I can't. But I know somebody who can speak about war. So let me give you 1 minute of the Honorable Bob Nestor Marley. And let me see you 7020. And 73rd, I'm hoping you can hear this. Let me see if you can hear this. Awesome. So there's war and rumors of war, conflict. I don't see any bopping. War in the west, war up north, war down south, but we're not talking about war tonight. Rumors of war. This is the Honorable Robert Nestor Marley. DG Eli, you said we're supposed to have fun? We Rotarians will do what is necessary.
And we know we shall win, as we are confident.
We are confident of the victory of good over evil. I would sing, but that's not why I'm here tonight. So we're going to continue. I think this is a timely topic. What is conflict? And you have on screen an outline of our conversation tonight. I want to congratulate the leaders of 7020 and 7030, the incoming leaders, the presidents, the secretaries, the treasurers, other members of the board. 2020-21 is going to be a challenging time for you. Let me say, it's going to be a time full of opportunities. Rotary opens opportunities. It's a time of social media. Everybody has something to say. Everybody has a forum. Everybody has an audience. And they will take the time to say something. And we're going to have to learn to interact with that. COVID-19, or current condition, has proven to be a threat to people's economic stability, to their mental health, and in some cases to their personal well-being. Anecdotally, we know that domestic abuse, child abuse is on the rise. And with stay-at-home policies in place, we're not seeing each other as often as we should. And you heard from Rotary International Director Mario, we're not having those hugs. We're not having those conversations. And out of that, there can be miscommunications and misunderstanding. Conflict is going to increase. Unfortunately, we know this in dispute resolution circles. As Rotarians, we're going to have to interact with more and more persons who are involved in conflict, and persons are going to be hurting. And we know that hurt persons hurt others. So what I'm going to ask you tonight is to be intentional, to think about how you're going to be called upon to interact with persons. And when you see instances of conflict, I want you to know, and there are a few things I want you to take away tonight, and it will be okay if you take these things away. A lot of it will not be personal. It won't be. And if you understand that, that's a powerful thing. A lot of conflict is really, really not about you. People are going through stuff. This is going to be a time for you to exercise true leadership, some conflict resolution skills, the time to be your best self. And the 2020-21 RI theme is Rotary opens opportunities. So you will have a lot of opportunities to prove yourself, to be your highest selves. And so before I go on tonight, I know that we're supposed to save the chat for questions, but I want you to make this promise up front to yourselves to help you through your year, but also a promise in relation to the organization that we serve. And I will deal with it a little bit more. But when you're interfacing with the public, and we're talking about conflict, and that's the context, remember the end goal, remember why you do what you do, and protect the brand. Protect the brand. And I want you to promise yourself, as leaders, we do not have the luxury, not for 2020 or 2021. You can wait until after you're no longer president or secretary, but I'm joking. But you do not have the luxury to be part of the conflict, to be part of the problem. We're called upon to be the solution. So in the chat, I want you to enter, I can't see it on my screen, a promise to yourself and a declaration for everybody, and afterwards we will save the chat for questions. I want you to enter, be the solution. Be the solution. Can you do that for me? I'm going to stop sharing so we can do that. I want everybody's participation. I also teach you know this. So let's see, be the solution. This is a promise to yourself. This is a promise to your club. This is a promise to your district. Be the solution. And then the other thing I'm going to ask you, you don't have to write it in, but bear in mind is protect the brand. Protect the brand. All right, let's have this conversation. I'm trying to share my screen. All right, we're there now. So what is conflict? We had a definition in the video earlier, and this is another definition that I would commend to you, and it's used in dispute resolution circles. Conflict, and it's a fairly simple definition. It's where there are incompatible or opposing persons, ideas, or interests. There's a clash, there's a disagreement, there's a dispute. They're opposing. If they have the same interests, if people have the same ideas, the video spoke about needs, then there's no dispute, there's no conflict. So when there's a clash, when there's an opposition, then it's a dispute. And what I want you to bear in mind tonight is that conflict is actually inevitable. And so we're going to look at the different types of conflict. The talk is sometimes we don't agree, and that's all right. Conflict is not to be avoided, it is to be managed. Why does it happen? People have different data or facts or interpretation of those facts. What you see on your screen are the root causes of conflict. And if we understand and we know this, then it helps us to identify the causes. And that's the identify the cause and then therefore the approach that we should use. And that's the value of knowing. So two people can go to the same party, the same event, the same Rotary meeting, and come away with a completely different opinion about how that event, that meeting, that party went. They have different interpretation of the facts, even when they have the same facts. And there are scientific reasons for it. There are things we take in, things we don't notice, things we delete. Somebody else will notice something at the party. Somebody else will delete that. Different facts or interpretation. And so we don't agree on what the very thing we saw, we don't agree. Different values or beliefs, different principles, different worldviews. We're human beings, we weren't born in the same place, we weren't raised the same way. For parents who have children, you know you have two children in the same house. Same parents, totally different personalities, values can be different. So different personalities, modes of behavior, communication, the way we communicate, or emotional responses, culture plays a part in our personality and our behavior. Different objectives, goals, and interests, what it is that we want. Sometimes can be different. A husband and wife in a bedroom, the wife wants the room to be warm, the husband wants the room to be cold. There's a conflict, there's a different interest. What we know in dispute resolution circles is that a lot of times people say they have different interests, but we don't explore the options and the opportunities for the interests to be met. I can give you an example. There's a story we use often in these circles that explains it. It's very simple. So a mother heard her children quarreling about an orange. And there was one orange, and they each wanted the orange. So the mother said, fine, we have one orange, let me cut it in two. You take half, you take half. She disappears, still hears quarreling in the room. The dispute has not been resolved. So she goes back. Then she learns one wants the orange for the skin, the rind, to bake. The other wants the orange for the juice. On the face of it, they have different interests and goals, but there's a resolution. And a lot of times we say, well, your interest is not mine, your need is not mine, which is what the video spoke about earlier. And there's a clash without an exploration of what is behind it. Then structural clashes, unequal authority and or resources. You see that a lot in organizations. You see that in businesses. Things need to be done, but people don't have the same access to resources to facilitate things. Sometimes you may have a time constraint. I don't know if any of you have ever seen these, but you may have. We rarely see, and I want to bring it home to you, we're looking at the same thing, but we see things differently. So on this side, I would say the left, but I'm not sure how it's coming up. Do we see a young woman or do we see an old woman? We're looking at the same picture. Science now tells us this picture has been around since 18 how long to test this. But science tells us we actually see things according to where we are, our ages. So for those who can't see the young woman, there's a young woman there and there's an old woman there. The young woman, if you can see my cursor, this is a feather out of her hat. This is her hair. This is her eyelash, her nose, her chin, and her neck, and a necklace. This is the young woman. I'm outlining her face. I'm hoping you could see this. Now, where's the old woman? There's an old woman there. This is the hair of the old woman. Here's the old woman's eye. See that? Her nose and her mouth. and her chin. We see the same things differently. This one on the other side should be easier to see. You will see that there's a vase on the white relief, and on the black, you see faces. I thought I would, so we see things differently. We also experience the same things differently. And I'm taking the time to do this because I'm hoping at the end of the night, you realize that a lot of time we respond to conflict because of what we perceive, not because of what is actually happening, but because of the meaning that we attribute to something. We attribute a meaning to something and then we react accordingly. So if I were to ask you in May 2019, a year ago, if you were in a bank and this man came up behind you, what would you do? What would you think? He's a bank robber. Only bank robbers wear masks to bank. So some of us will be having a heart attack. Some people will be under the floor. All the man has done is entered. He hasn't done anything. This is our reaction to him. What about this month? Our experience is different. The same man can walk into the bank with a mask. We do not react because our experience tells us no, that this is not a bank robber. It very well could be, because what that person has done has not changed. What has changed is our reaction, our perception of what is happening. And so what you will hear from me tonight is a lot of times what inspires conflict is our reaction, our perception. And if I'm saying our, but it's also somebody else's reaction. And if we know that, then we can treat with it. We can monitor ourselves, but we can also speak with the other person to find out what is it that you're seeing? What is it that you're thinking without treating it personally? Because they're reacting from their exposure. Some time ago, we were having a meeting of Rotarians and leaders, and somebody said, well, we shouldn't have conflicts. We're Rotarians. What I want to say to you tonight is that conflict is inevitable. And if you understand that, you won't be surprised by it. If you understand that, you won't take it too personally. If you don't take it personally, you will have energy to carry out the work, because leadership is going to require a lot from you in 2020, 2021. We're Rotarians, we're upstanding, but we're a little bit demanding, and we have COVID-19 working with us. It's going to require a lot of energy. So do not be derailed by conflict. If you see it, we're not going to put our heads in the sand. It is what it is. And I want you to say that after me. It is what it is. And it is not personal. So don't be allergic to conflict. We know the bad things that can happen from conflict. It can create anxiety, uncertainty, discomfort, of course. Because if we heard somebody say something and it's not resolved, or we're seeing somebody adopt a particular attitude, we will be uncomfortable interacting with that person. Conflict can cause relationships to be destroyed, lead to membership attrition. We can have conflict with the members, or membership attrition. People leave just because they're tired of the drama. They're seeing conflict in the club. So they're themselves not involved, but they leave. They've had enough. I didn't join Rotary for this. Our mission is service, service above self. So we're expected to do certain projects, do good for humankind. If we're having clashes and conflict, it can disrupt a project. I'm sure some past presidents, and I can tell you stories of, if you don't manage conflict, if you don't manage sometimes, so not hide, but see that something is happening on a committee, you will think the project is going off. And 3 days before the project, you will hear there are things amiss, project not happening. So we have to manage, so we know that conflict can cause that. We have to manage that. And worse, for us, it can lead to bad publicity and therefore bad public image. Why is that bad? Rotary trades its good name. That's all we have. We ask the public to have faith in us, to treat us as persons of integrity, to treat us as persons who will do the right thing. And if the public does not buy into us, if the public does not do that, believe in us, then bad publicity and bad public image will let all that we do in vain. We will not be able to do what we do. So we know this, and these are the reasons why we need to manage conflict. But there are advantages of conflict, and I want us to look at that very briefly. If there's a conflict, it tells us that a problem exists. It gives us an awareness, and that is very important because sometimes persons won't say anything. So as leaders, we have to be observant. What is happening there? And we're going to look at the types of conflict, but there's something, we can't bury our head in the sand. So it tells us that there's a situation going on. It can lead to better solutions and creativity if everybody thought the same way. We really would not get very far. In Rotary, we say we're looking for persons with different vocations, with different talents. And that there's a reason for that. We bring different things to the table. So when people have different ideas, we get great solutions. We get creativity, and things can actually be more efficient. Advantages of conflict: it can challenge assumptions, change outdated practices. I smile, we're doing online meetings, and there were Rotarians who never turned on their laptop before now, and they will tell you they can't. And this is why they can't go to my Rotary. We have a conflict. COVID-19 says stay home. Rotary says come to meeting. We have a conflict, so we have to figure out how to deal with that. How do you meet in a COVID-19 environment? So now we know how we can turn on laptops. Now we know we can go on my Rotary. Other advantages: it makes us aware of what's important to individuals. And as leaders, that is very, very important. A lot of time we make assumptions as to what persons like, what persons don't like. When you see people interact, and if you see some disagreement, you can have a better understanding of what's important to persons, what different persons' values are. For some persons, respect is more important than being liked. For some persons, they just really want to be liked. Some persons want to be thanked publicly. So you go and you make an announcement in front of the club, in front of everybody, and you make sure you do that. Others do not call their name. They're happy to do what they do. And conflict also, if we manage it well, validates other ideas and opinions. So it may be that we have conflicting ideas, but you know, this idea can't work today or for this project, but it can work for another time. Or we're going along with this project, but we can tweak it this way. So there are lots of advantages to conflict, and that is because everybody brings something to the table. That being so, should conflicts be resolved when? Only when there's a problem. We don't have to run into every conflict. We see something, we're going to work on some techniques. You only intervene when there's a problem. Parents know this. 2 children, they're about to kill themselves, burn down the house. You go in, they've resolved it. They need to learn how to work together. So you only intervene when it's going to disrupt the process, when it's going to disrupt what we do. So having said all of that, what are the types of conflicts that we see largely in workplaces and in organizations like ours? Except, I mean, we're Rotarians, so we don't have many, but so let us say this is Kiwanis or Toastmasters and one of those. I hope none of those are online here, but let us pretend, just in case we go through this. Relationship conflict. And as the name suggests, That happens when their personalities are clashing. And sometimes that happens because people grow up differently, they have different values. We're going to learn that. So that is a conflict of who. And we see that sometimes when there are committees working together. When it's a clash of who, and you're sure that it's a personality conflict and not another type of conflict, then there's a way of dealing with that. And what I would like to also say tonight is, as leaders, you also need to know when you are not the right person to intervene in that conflict. And that's particularly important with personality conflicts. Personality conflicts means that this is coming from deep, this is coming from within. It's not an objective thing. It's person's belief, value. So therefore, somebody has to step in who that person, those persons have belief in and can trust, and who will have the time to intervene. And you know, in some clubs, we have those go-to persons. You want to, as leaders, figure out who some of those go-to persons are now. Identify them. So when you're seeing that sort of thing, they're persons who people will respect. So, you know, you might have been lucky enough to have a PRID Barry in your club. And you might not be the person to speak to this one, so you send a PRID Barry to go deal with that. And to thine own self be true. Know your personality and know whether you're the right fit to intervene in a relationship conflict. And that is when there are interpersonal differences. A process conflict now is when the group is disagreeing over how to approach a task, how to go about doing a project, how to go about doing service. That's a process conflict, and we can handle that differently. Sometimes it will sound like personalities because you're seeing people going at each other, but if we intervene and we listen, it's everybody trying to do the same thing but differently. And so we can use that as a tool because we know we're trying to get to the same place, we just disagree on how. Task conflict is a disagreement about what we're doing, why we're doing this project, whose project is this, or how we're doing this project. And so that is to be dealt with differently. That is information, and actually all of them stem from lack of information. Your starting point is to ask yourself, what is going on? What don't I know? Your greatest asset will be to not make assumptions. What don't I know? And give persons the chance to answer that. Don't assume you know. Ask, because in their telling you, you will understand where they're coming from. Is this personality? Is this task? Is this process? What is it? Are there a clash of interest? What is it? And then the response is what you're trying to get to is a why. And why doesn't just mean why. It's what, where, how, who, and when. And this, of course, is Rotary context-based, based on we're doing projects, we're doing service, we're in an organization, we're in a structure. A lot of the times, if we just take time to pass information, conflicts can be avoided. And again, it's not personal. When you see people reacting, it ain't about you. And I want you to, if you understand that, that's powerful. And just remember that this ain't about me. It ain't about me. I would briefly want to look at personalities and styles. And it's important to know the sorts of persons in your club. It's also important to know yourself, to thine own self be true. So we have people who will avoid, you know what, they'll just ignore and walk away. The accommodator is going to kill themselves over trying to please everybody. The competitor is going to go in there and just kill everybody, destroy relationships. We'll get it done, but the carnage, the bodies along the way. The collaborator is going to try and problem solve and harmonize and see how they can bring people together. The compromiser almost tries to do that, but they do a middle ground. And that's not always a good thing, because middle ground sometimes means neither side gets what they want. So like the mother with the orange, cut it in two, neither side got what they want. And that's because you're trying to go down the middle, but that doesn't always work. I just have this fun project to ask you if you can see members of your club in our project. So we have our little nice gung-ho person here who is a compromiser. We're gonna, the collaborator, we're gonna cut this grass. So the project is to cut the grass. This is our competitor. Yeah, I go in for the biggest thing I can find. Our compromiser, okay, let us do this. This is our piece of hair. This grass kills me if I fall down in the sun. And here is our avoider. Why do we have to cut this grass? Let me feel this grass. Let me lie down on this grass. Know your people. So what are some of the techniques? Again, it's important that the starting point is to listen. And we're listening, and we're really listening to understand. A lot of people just listen because they want to respond or they want to put across their point of view. In conflict resolution, we listen. And that's why sometimes a mediator, and that is an option open to you. You saw that in the video. Sometimes people bring in a third party. Why? Because people don't listen to each other. And the skill of the mediator really is just to listen and to have each side listen to each other. So what you're doing is you're listening and trying to figure out where the conflict is. Remember, we spoke about personalities. Remember, we spoke about the interpersonal conflict. Is this a process conflict? Is this a conflict about the task, what we're doing? All of them require information, but there's a different approach. There's a different strategy. Communicate. What information is missing? I have a story to tell you, but I'm going to leave it until the end if we have time. Another technique, set limits and play fair. Start out by what are the rules? If people know the rules and they know, do not assume that people know the rules. Because if we assume that people know the rules and they don't, if they do something out of the ordinary or not what you expect, then what we often do is attribute characteristics to that person. That person is inconsiderate. That person is not playing fair. When you never told them what the rules were. For Rotary, we are a Rotary club. So we've heard, and I've heard on the PEDS training, it said that there's no Rotary police, and that's true. Clubs are autonomous. But the flip side of that is that we're Rotary. So again, we're not Kiwanis, we're not a lodge, we're not another club. We're Rotary, which means we're like a franchise, which means there's a structure, which means that there are governance documents, which means that there are club rules, there are bylaws, there's a manual of procedure. What is the beauty of that? It tells us what the guidelines are. And if we're Rotarians, that actually may satisfy a conflict, because there are things that are mandatory. So there are things that, for example, we know community funds and club funds should not be mixed. We know that. So it doesn't make sense having a conflict or an argument over that, because we know that. Rotary says that, we're Rotary, that's what we do. So sometimes just having the rules in place, but communicating the rules, you have to communicate the rules, is a technique to say, hey, this is what we're playing with. This is what we have to do. And then lead. And I've dumped a lot of stuff on the leading. And I have be who you would like to follow. Be transparent and trustworthy. Sometimes there's a conflict, meaning just there's a clash of ideas, but it is managed because of the leader. You know why? Sometimes people may not agree, and that's all right. But they agree to go along with you because they trust you. They trust what the end result is going to be. They trust your word. They trust that I don't agree with the process. I don't think we should be doing this task. Maybe we should be going to the children's home and not the old people's home. But I trust that this is what we're supposed to be doing at this time. Do not underestimate that power as a leader. right? So even for the cliques and the persons, and I know you're saying maybe not everybody is on board, this is your opportunity to lead. And if you prove yourself trustworthy and it's being transparent, it's communicating, a lot of the conflicts will resolve themselves. Support the team. The other thing is Rotarians are volunteers. We can't fire. We need everybody on board. The other thing is Rotarians are leaders and they're successful in their businesses and in their communities. So we have to manage that and we have to support the team. It's a voluntary effort. It's not me, it's not I lead. It is, this is my opportunity for this particular year to do good by my club. Protect the brand. Protect the Rotary brand, because we can't do what we do if we don't have a good name. Take responsibility. As a leader, sometimes it's not really your fault, but it is all right. You can take responsibility for it. The buck stops with you. And then you clean up, be the solution. Give kudos at the same time. Thank those who need to be thanked, recognize those who are to be recognized. And I don't know what the French translation is, but don't throw your team onto the bus. Don't throw your Rotarians onto the bus. As a leader, you step up to the plate, because a lot of times that can cause conflict when we don't take responsibility or give kudos when they're due. And be flexible. The project may not go exactly the way you want it to go. Your year may not go exactly the way you want it to go. But you know what? Did you accomplish service? Were your members satisfied? Did your membership grow? Was the community served? So it maybe didn't go exactly the same way. Dispute happens. It's inevitable. Do not be derailed by it. And when all else fails, get help. And I actually shouldn't put it as all else fails. Get help. The Rotarians with dispute resolution skills, sometimes, again, you might not be the right person to intervene. So, you know, I'm married to PDG Felix, and I will tell you, our styles are completely different. PDG Felix, everybody knows, is laid back. He will get the job done. His wife, on the other hand, she's going to go in, clean up, and ask questions when we're ready to place the bodies. PDG Felix will ask the questions up front. I know that about myself. I'm being very vulnerable with you, and I have to check myself in relation to that. To thine own self be true. So know who you can rely on to get help, because you don't want to spend your energy dealing with things and taking them personally. This is your regular self-check, something else that you should do. If you find that there's a conflict and you find that you're reacting to it in a certain way, then you need to stop. Again, you're the leader. You do not have the luxury of joining the drama. There are lots of people who like drama, but you don't have to attend the performance. You don't have to accept an invitation to every argument that you are invited to. You do not have that luxury. So step back. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Because is it a wonderful opportunity to be a leader? Absolutely. Will it be challenging? Absolutely. Will it be fulfilling? Definitely, yes. So step back. Rotary four-way test. This is what we're guided by. These are our values. And when you're going through something, there's really nothing better than the four-way test. Is it the truth? If it's not the truth, we don't need to go any further. If it's the truth, what do we know? What do we not know? Is it fair to all concerned? And we have our checklist. I have beside us the COVID I pulled a COVID poster, keep calm and wash your hands. I have some COVID advice, conflict advice. Don't spread germs. That's what conflict is when it gets out of hand. Do not spread the germs. Conflict is inevitable, so accept it and manage it. There are advantages to it, but wash your hands, sanitize and disinfect when you see that conflict around you, because what you want to do is start clean. Fact check. Sanitize, disinfect, which means start clean. Fact check. What don't I know? What am I missing? Cover your mouth. Use your ears. Listen. We're doing the COVID conflict resolution tips. Self-isolate. Again, don't join the drama. Step back to understand what is going on and do not take it personally. Let me tell you something that just happened to me, and I'm pretty proud of myself, the way I handled it. But you also have to be intentional. And it's really powerful when you realize that people are really trying to do the best they can, and it's really not about you. And as Rotarians, we're called upon to do a lot of things. We're given opportunities. We're called upon to provide, they're really favors to the community. And so I was asked to do a certain thing, and I did it, I thought, and was very proud of myself until I got a slap on my hand and I was told, you broke the rules. Why did you do it this way? This is not the way we do it. This is causing inconvenience, and it might be inconsiderate of others and their time. So I was a bit taken aback. I was hurt, but I stopped and I had a discussion with myself. I said, self, Carla, pretty girl, sometimes you have to encourage yourself. I said, pretty girl, what don't you know? There's obviously a rule that you infringed. There's a rule that you did not know about. So this is not about you. It cannot be about you because this person doesn't know you. And if they don't know you, then it's really not about you. So what is this about? There's a process, there's something that you did not engage. And so I put myself in the other person's shoe. And that is a fantastic technique, and we use it as mediators. Put yourself in the other person's shoe so you can see what they see, you can feel how they feel. And so I did that. And then I found out what the rule was. And then I realized if I did it my way, it was going to cause inconvenience. It was going to create a backlog. So I followed the rule. It took nothing off me to follow the rule. I followed the rule. Am I going to get upset about it? No. That comes with practice. I can still feel a little bit hurt, but why am I getting upset? Because we're not going to accomplish anything that way. Again, it's a powerful thing to realize that a lot of times it's not personal. It ain't about you. It's not about you. So we were on self-isolate, step back and ask what is happening here. And then last one, stay away from sick people. We're still on our COVID tips. There's some people that are really difficult. There's some people who really like the drama, stay away from them, stay away from sick people. And then send the experts in there, so get help. Send the other people in there who have the PPE, the protective garments, send them in there, because that's not something you want to deal with. I want to encourage you not to lose focus when it gets rough. And this is a way also to appeal to persons, because Rotarians generally are trying to do good in the world. What is it that we agree on? We don't have to agree on everything, but what do we agree on? We agree that together, and I want y'all to say it with me. I know we can't unmute our mics. Say it in French. Together, we see a world where people unite. It's not just alone. All of us uniting, we're taking action, creating lasting change across the globe in our communities, and don't forget the last one, in ourselves. And that's what Rotary brings to the table. It's gonna bring challenges, but it's gonna bring opportunities. It's gonna create change in ourselves. And one change that we can intentionally focus on this year is how we manage conflict, because conflict is inevitable. So in summary, protect the brand, do no harm. When you're seeing conflict, figure out whether or not you should intervene. Listen, really listen, then communicate carefully. Don't be a part of the drama. Don't attend the performance, and certainly don't go on stage yourself. Do not take part. You do not have the luxury of being part of the problem. Be the solution. Get help when you need it, and lead. Keep calm and carry on. I want to thank you. I want to say have an awesome year. I know you will. And don't worry, because every little thing is going to be just all right. My best wishes to you all.
Well, thank you very much, AG Carla. That was a phenomenal presentation. And just to quote Jean-Marc, he's quoted Alicia Keys' song, "She's on Fire." So it was really, truly enjoyable. We have a few questions, if you can. And unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to field all the questions. So I'll just ask some of the ones that we got. And this comes from Trudy. Is it fair to say that you should adopt a different style depending on the type of conflict?
Excellent question. My answer is absolutely. Because what sometimes people do is they go in and they assume that it's a personality conflict. And we do that because that's the first thing we see. We see people disagreeing. If we can put away the personalities and attack the problem, not the persons, attack the problem, it's easier for the problem to be resolved. So if people can see, listen, this is not about you either. Let us agree on, we all agree that we should be doing this. Let us say it's a process conflict. We agree that we should be doing this. Why don't together we figure out how we should do this? And maybe one way is appropriate now and another way is appropriate another time. So I agree, if we know, and it's a good tool to have, that there are different types of conflicts, then we know how to approach it. And it's much easier to approach something when people aren't tied to the results, when we can move the personalities out of the way. And it makes people more open to accepting the solution.
Okay, great. This comes from Gina. Gina says, what best practice can you recommend when the conflict happens during a meeting or immediately after, when time is not on your side to work through it?
Time is always on your side to work through it, unless it's a fight, and then that has to be dealt with immediately. So again, you have to step back and ask, why are the people acting this way? Why would it show up in a meeting? And that is the time when you actually have to remove it from the meeting and take time. This thing takes time. This thing is not easy. This thing is not overnight. And especially if persons have not dealt with it, and so it comes to the fore, there's something that triggers it, is going to take time to deal with. So what I would suggest is, if you don't have time to deal with it, it happens in a meeting, address it, say it's not acceptable in a meeting, but send somebody in to deal with it. And that can be somebody who the Rotarians will respect. That can be somebody who will, sometimes it's really just the rules. So you need sometimes, even the different personality types, sometimes you need a heavy lifter to go in there. Or you need somebody who is very amenable to helping persons. Because the truth is, people are going through a lot of things and we don't know. And because we're leaders in our communities, we're so used to being at the top of our game. We're so used to hiding behind a mask that things will erupt, and we don't realize that people are going through other things. The starting point is, do not take it personally, but you have to take the time to inquire what is going on.
Okay, this one is from Lucretia. What is the best way to deal with conflict when it is clear that it's becoming personal and respect is no longer served?
All right, so if this is personal and if this is personal with a leader, then that is when you actually need to bring in somebody, because then people won't listen to each other and they can't speak to each other. They can't. We're human beings, we can't, because we're invested in it. And that is when I would actually say, bring in a third party, an objective third party. A third party who is not going to make assumptions, who is not going to take sides. And that may mean you may have to go outside of the club, be discreet about it, but you may have to actually bring somebody in from outside of the club to sit persons down. It may be that they don't have to end up liking each other, but they will respect each other and they will agree a way forward. So if it's personality, and especially if it has to do with a leader, so it's going to impact the club, then I would suggest definitely just bringing in, have a third party deal with that.
Great. There was one from Rajiv. How do you resolve a conflict where a group is dominant within the club?
That's a 2-hour discussion. Very good question. First of all, you have to, there's a reason groups are dominant in clubs. It's a power play. There's something they're getting out of that dominance, which you have to recognize. And then you have to split it up. Because it may affect the rest of the club. If it doesn't affect the rest of the club, you split it up for different reasons. And there are different techniques. People do it in different ways. You deliberately have various groups. So some clubs will have what they call color teams or name teams. You know the cliques, and you split them up in other teams and you get them to interact at a different level for different projects. But it has to be deliberate. And in doing the teams, you also don't want to create cliques out of those. So if you have a dominant group, you're just going to have to find techniques to split up that group without challenging them. And I'm saying challenging them in a way, unless they're really harming the club. People don't like to lose face. And if they think they're losing face, then they're going to push back really hard. So you look at the personalities in that group. Again, are there other persons in the club that they might respect, that you can get in to speak with them? And then find out why they're exerting that dominance and then deal with it. It's a power play and they want attention for some reason or something. Maybe you can channel that energy into some project or some activity of the club and recognize them. And then eventually they should fall in line. Again, all of these techniques take time and patience. Did I say patience? Lots of patience.
Carla, one of the things you mentioned is if all else fails, get help. I think that is key to a lot of the clubs because as presidents, I think you have a lot of time consumed running the club. Who would you think is the best person to go and get help from?
It depends. And I'm glad you took me back to that. Because let me say this to leaders and to presidents. We'd like to think we can solve everything. We can't. Do not put that on yourselves. You would like to think everybody would like you. They may not. People don't like me just because of the way I sound. I look like an old girlfriend. I don't like you because you look like my old girlfriend. You don't have time to worry about that. I'm saying that to say you may not be the person to deal with it. Get help, and that help comes in different forms. If there is somebody in your club that everybody looks up to, respect, you can ask that person to intervene. I have been brought in as a Rotarian in my capacity as a mediator to deal with persons in a club that's not my club in a very, very discreet manner. So you can actually look for experts in the field because it does take some expertise, because the other thing is you don't want the wrong person to go in there. So it really depends on your assessment of it. Is it enough that there is a person in the club that people look up to who is willing to spend some time? Use that person. If it looks like it's going to be more, then you really might want to find an expert. And if you're community leaders, you can get somebody who is not a Rotarian, who is a mediator. I know mediators in the different territories, and they actually might be willing to do it without a fee as a give back to the community. So it really depends on why you need help, what your assessment of the situation is.
Hey, thank you, Carla. Carla, I just want to read a couple things here for you from Vernice. Fabulous presentation. All incoming presidents should be given a copy of tonight's presentation to be guided as we're beginning our Rotary year. I told you Jean-Marc says you were on fire already. Andrea says she loves the presentation. Thank you so much. Shireen, dynamic presentation. And the accolades go on and on and on. So on behalf of District 7020 and 7030, I'd like to thank you tremendously for the wonderful presentation. I know everyone was on the edge of their seats, but I would really like to bring in DGE Charles here to say a few words.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, and it was my pleasure, my absolute pleasure. Thank you.
And let me go on record again also of thanking you, Carla, for your outstanding presentation. Something that is timely. Why? We're going to be about some phenomenal change. And if there's one thing that's going to bring about conflict, it's going to be change. Older Rotarians who don't want to move, younger Rotarians who want to move too fast. You're in my seat, you're in my way. There's going to be so much opportunities for conflict to happen, and I'm hopeful that you will take to heart some of the things that you would have heard tonight, because we are only going to be excellent if we work together. And everyone, no matter where they are, based on their uniqueness, have a part to play. And so we have to be able to draw on our strengths as leaders, knowing that, yes, sometimes we may disagree, but what is our truest intent? Our intent is to be the best and make the best out of every opportunity. So we're armed. One of the things I was taught early is make sure you know now you're gonna have conflict. Don't pretend it ain't gonna happen. It ain't gonna happen, guaranteed. But now you know how to prepare yourself in the event it does happen. And so use these tools as you equip. You've got a toolkit that you're putting together with each of these sessions. You're adding something else in the toolkit. And sometimes with each of these sessions, you're writing down one point that you're gonna work on. Put that in your toolkit. Come July 1, you're gonna need it. So, to thine own self be true, is what Carla reminded us tonight. The man in the mirror, that's us. Let's start with us first, and let's go and make the world great. Thank you for staying on so long with us tonight. Great presentation, and I bid you all a wonderful good evening.
DGE Charles, I just wanted to say some persons wrote to me. I just put my email address in the chat. So you can contact me there if you need to reach me. Otherwise, the presentation will be available. But I won't be able to respond to all the private chats in the chat. But I did see it, so please just write to me. Thanks.
Thank you very much, AG Carla, and I wish you the best year ever. I could see 2 DGs coming from one family, but we'll leave that for another time. Thank you very much as well to all of our participants tonight for joining us and staying on. It was an absolutely phenomenal presentation by AG Carla. And I'd just like to thank all the people in the background, our translators and interpreters, DG Hervé, Natalie, and Vicky. The survey crew in the back who assist me, Liz and Abe, and to our Zoom coordinator, Sean, who continues to let people in all the time, on time, and start us and keep us on our toes. And as AG Carla says, don't bring in the bodies, okay? Let's stay true to ourselves and let's have a great year, folks. So with that, I would like to sign off here tonight, and I wish you all a very good night. Thank you.